right, so welcome to another session of Solution Ghana. Today we are on the episode 3 of where to invest in Ghana, where to look when it comes to Ghana and investing in Ghana. Today we are talking real estate. The real estate market is a very intricate, vast market, and I think that you need to know and understand the real estate trends and what the attractiveness is, or otherwise the nature of real estate in Ghana, where to invest, what are the risk factors, and some other issues when it comes to mortgaging and all that, okay? And then leveraging when it comes to juxtaposing it to the developed world out there. What are the opportunities? What are some of the risk factors we need to look at? So today, joining me is a very familiar face as far as Solution Ghana is concerned, and we have in person, online, Dr. Ganyoame Elorm Brian. He is an architect, an entrepreneur, and CEO of Imperial, Oasis, Realty and Construction Limited. And as I said, we're going to delve so much into real estate today. Let's look at it from a very professional lens. He is somebody I've come to know. He's a colleague so far as real estate is concerned. And so, Mr. Ganyoame, or let me say Dr. Ganyoame Brian, welcome to today's episode.
Thank you. You're awesome. You're doing such a wonderful work.
Thank you.
More grease to your elbows.
Thank you very much. What have you been up to lately? I know you're busy.
A couple of construction projects here and there, and leveraging on the real estate is what we are currently doing.
Okay.
And educating on financial literacy also. So primarily, these are the main core mandates that we are imbibing in.
I'm very excited to have you in the studios, actually, because I know that there are quite some intricate issues that we need to delve into now, right? So let's consider, so let's consider the first thing I want to ask you. Let's consider this. What is the real estate market like, generally, broadly, as you've observed it in Ghana?
In the interim, the real estate industry is one of the most prolific industries in Ghana. Taking note of certain statistics that is available to us, which is that since 2016, the real estate industry has had 30% compounding interest in respect to the investment portfolio when it comes to real estate. And so when you juxtapose it to any other investments, you realize that it's even better than buying bonds. It's even better also than buying treasury bill and other investment portfolios that you can think about. So when you look at the primary indicators that makes any asset class or any investment good, I would say that it is very prolific and it's also very promising.
Okay, that's quite interesting because currently I know that let's take treasury bill, for instance, is quite less than 20% per annum when it comes to investments and returns, when it comes to interest, right? So are you saying that if I had a 1 million cedis, you would advise that I take or I go into real estate as compared to treasury bills?
Absolutely. So primarily you go with the figures. Anytime that you are giving an indication of comparison, you look at the statistics and you also look at the merit and the demerit of what you are talking about. So that's why I keep on telling you that let's work with the numbers. I am a numbers person. If the numbers make sense, then we should rather work with the numbers, irrespective of where the investment is going. As you may well know, real estate is prolific because of getting the data available to you. As we know, treasury bill and then also bonds give you between 18 to 20% per annum. And real estate can give you as much as 30% per annum. So it means that looking at both options, irrespective of what work goes into either of them, you can still see it as a more intentionally better option when it comes to your investment. That is why I would rather go into real estate investments than put my money elsewhere. So basically, that is that in respect to real estate.
What maybe we want to look at it in terms of stability, because we can say that a couple of months before now, Treasury bills, for instance, would go as high as 27, 28%. Some even went as high as 30, 31% at a certain point based on the supply and demand at a particular point. But talking about steady growth, are we making the fact, is it a fact that real estate has a more steady return value as compared to bonds and treasury bills and all that? Is that what we are concluding on? Looking at the years, the
yes. So primarily, the indicators in respect to real estate is defined by the individual in the market. So it is not determined by any factors outside or internally. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Example, treasury bill depends on how well government does in respect to their project and what they get in respect to your investment. But when it comes to, and there are other parameters, the IMF can determine how much they will be paying you, bank transactions and other indicators will determine at the end of it all how much you are going to get. But when it comes to real estate, it is determined, it's more like supply and demand in respect to it. So if the demand is higher, then the supply becomes lower, then you are able to get more out of it. The indicators in respect to real estate has always been promising in the sense that there is no structure that determines how much I should sell my project or I should request for how much I am selling a piece of land. It is determined on how much the person is willing to pay, and I'm also willing to give it out for. So it makes it relatively more attractive because you have control over the amount that you are selling the end product and in respect to real estate, as compared to that of the other ones, which is determined by a government institution or other external parameters.
Are we suggesting that the real estate trend in Ghana, or we want to say it's a global standard? Well, we can debate on that, but are we suggesting that it's more of a jungle where, you know, one stands up and decides that, okay, well, this is what I've put into it and this is what I want from it? Or you still want to say that it's based on who has the purchasing power and thinks it reasonable to purchase at a certain value?
So that's what makes real estate quite prolific and interesting, because no government institution has been able to come up with a modus operandi under which real estate should be managed, okay? Real estate is, as you said, the jungle of the toughest. The tougher you are in the industry, the better it is for you, because then you have leverage to decide for yourself which way to go or which way not to go. In fact, there has been hoarding of properties for over a period of time where people invest in properties as a store of value, okay? So that in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, they can leverage on it as an investment portfolio for sustainability. But in respect to other options of investment, you would never ever have a situation where you have a leverage. It is always determined by how well the government does, how well other countries are doing, how much the trust in the institutions are. So it makes it very difficult for you to actually predict exactly what percentage you are getting on your real estate as compared to real estate, where you are the key determinant. In fact, if a property comes to the table, we know in areas specific amounts that it is going out for, okay? Example, if we say, okay, a 3-bedroom averagely in this area will cost X amount, it is not specific because it can also be relative. Relative in the sense that how much I put in respect to how the quality of finishing I put in a project would also determine how much it is going to cost. So we can have 2-3 bedrooms in the same jurisdiction, but different pricing. With the same land size, with the same units, but because I probably put in better quality, I will demand higher quality, higher pricing for the same property. So it makes it very dicey and very interesting when it comes to real estate investment.
Okay, so let me put it simply to kind of like put an imagery to what we're talking about. So if I invested in Volta region and I bought a land for 100,000 cedis, I may put up the same value of apartments as I would do if I got a land in Accra for, let's say, $100,000, right? The same value of apartments, the same maybe interior quality, but probably in terms of cumulative frequency or rates at which I will sell it and the returns I would get more in value in terms of percentage than I would get on a land, that probably values at 100,000 cedis. Is that the case? That I'll make more?
Yes. So location is also a key determinant in pricing. Okay, whatever you get for the cost of a land is dependent on the location. So the land value in a specific location is determined by a lot of factors, including even the kind of infrastructures available in the area, the proposition in respect to the investor interest in the area, and other key indicators in respect to the projections that a lot of people have, its proximity to specific locations and townships, its proximity to the water bodies and other things also determine the price of lands in specific areas. But that notwithstanding, anytime you are going into investment in real estate, there are three things that you have to ask yourself. Number one, what is the intention of what I want to use the land for in the next 5 years? Number two, what are the closest landmarks in respect to the land that I am going to buy? And also, what are the indicators in respect to, based on precedents or past events, what are the indicators that would give me leverage on comparing with how much I'll be able to sell it in the next 5 years to the next 6 years? So some of these things are the key indicators that when anybody who is in the real estate industry is going to buy a land or any property are looking at, because lands or properties are assets that you expect returns on investment on, which is the ROI. So if you do not take that into perspective, you might end up going to buy a land, irrespective of the fact that year in, year out, you would have a good interest on the land, but it might not be as exponential as you might anticipate. In fact, there are indicators like government policies of building stadiums near a land site, building an airport that can increase sentiments, okay, or near the sea or near the river body. All these are things that can really affect the price and also indicate the potential that the land would have in the long term. So all these are indicators that you have to put in, especially when you are going to buy lands. Because if you don't ask yourself these questions, someone will say, this land is too expensive. Someone will call a land for you and say, oh, it's too expensive. Have you asked yourself the premium on which the reason why the person is quoting that price? The person is quoting that price on the premises on certain indicators. So you have to ask yourself, what are these indicators? And are these indicators good enough to give me the returns of investment that I'll be expecting comparative to other investment forms?
Okay. Is this nature of real estates found across the world? Or there are places that are standardized or more regulated or has a more, if I don't want to use the word effective framework, but a framework that is defined to say that, okay, so when you have a property in this zonal area, these are some of its value or related value as compared to this. Or it's always left to the businessman to pitch.
Okay, so across the entire world, and I've gone across board almost everywhere in the world and studying their real estate and how it is orchestrated. In developed countries, the difference is that mostly companies and institutions are the ones that are into the housing and construction. So unlike in Africa, where an individual can start a real estate business without necessarily having any framework, elsewhere you need certain regulatory assistance to be able to do that. So elsewhere, government institutions, companies are the ones that are in the mainframe providers of real estate in their countries. But in Africa, the advantage is that it is a free zone where any individual with the right information and the right mindset and with the right finance can enter into the real estate industry unabated. So which means that it gives us a leverage for everyone to be able to start a real estate business without necessarily having infrastructure or any certification to that regard. Whilst elsewhere, it is not like that. But it is not in respect to how they regulate the financial amount that it is being sold for. The amount that it is being sold for has to do with sentiments in respect to how much they think it is worth.
Okay.
How much they put into the infrastructure, how much they put into the utilities that would supply into that estate or that institution. So the only difference has to do with the fact that in Africa, mostly any individual can start. But elsewhere, you need certain infrastructure and certain amount of certification to be able to start a real estate industry.
But doctor, are we saying that there are no regulatory frameworks in Ghana, or you want to limit it to a particular direction?
Yes, so in the interim, there's no regulatory infrastructure that is known to us, where it determines that before anybody goes into real estate, whether it being land banking, whether it being development of residential or commercial infrastructure, they need to pass certain tests, need to get specific certification, or be able to do. No, there's nothing like that. It encourages all. Once you have the right infrastructure, once you have the right knowledge and this thing, you can even start without getting any certification in respect to.
But we've heard of the AMA, right? The Accra Metropolitan Assembly, and how they go around sometimes influencing the direction of properties and the location of certain properties and where certain, projects should be allocated here and there. Don't you think that that may be qualified for some kind of framework?
So the main mandate of the municipal assembly in respect to what you are talking about is what they call permits, okay? The granting of permits. The granting of permit primarily denotes that you are building in the right place. Is to certify that you are building in the right location. Number two, you are building with the right construction framework. You are building with the right construction codes, and that you are actually experienced to build a house or for residential purpose or commercial purpose. So it is not in respect to regulating the real estate industry and as to whether you have to build a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom in this jurisdiction or not. No, it is just a permit to leverage you on understanding that, okay, based on the design of your building, it is not on a government land. It is not on a sewer line. It is not on a proposed road in the future. So all these things are things that they do and verify, but it's not a real estate indicator in respect to what we are talking about currently, where we are talking about real estate investment. They don't have any business regulating real estate investments.
Okay. So would you, in your opinion, that it remains the way it is, or you think that there is room for improvement when it comes to framework? Well, I'm juxtaposing this to it being seen as an advantage for Africa or Ghana in perspective. Whether we should leave it that way, it should just be the jungle it is, so that let's run the race and see who wins.
Yes. So primarily, the answer is that governments, in especially Africa, have not been able to come up with the framework because of the lack of finance. Okay. If you have to actually come up with a framework, then there must be a support mechanism for your framework. for people to be able to come and then apply for that framework, which means that technically, if you are telling people that you want to determine how much a land is sold at a specific jurisdiction or a location, then you might be also willing to give them certain advantages and benefits, which might include incentivizing them to be able to get some kind of liquidity when it comes to the infrastructure that they want to do, okay? Or paying for certain infrastructure or promising them specific utility infrastructures, which the government in Africa are not willing to do. So that is the primarily. In fact, elsewhere in Europe and other places, a contractor is not allowed to develop an estate without first providing certain basic infrastructure. The first infrastructure that you have to provide is good roads. Number two, you have to provide electricity. You have to provide water. You have to provide gas as a primary requisition before you are given a permit to actually start a real estate development in a specific area. But the point is that is any government in Africa willing to provide these things as a premises on which other people are coming to say, okay, since this infrastructure is already provided, then we can come in and go ahead and do this. You see how dicey it is. So the problem has got to do with financing and putting in place the financial and instrumental infrastructure that would make you be able to, because if I have my land and government is coming to tell me how much I should sell the land, on what premise am I going to take their word for it? What are they offering me in return for me to say that, okay, based on the fact that government is providing X, Y, Z, then I can use it as a premise to also determine how much I'm going to sell my infrastructure.
Okay. So in that regard, well, there's still the final pool of supply and demand, right? If you put up your property anywhere and you're not getting, the returns as expected in your estimate, then you are forced to bring the price down so that
absolutely,
so that you can liquidate. Okay, so
absolutely.
Thank you for that. So let's delve a bit into the mortgage system as we have it in Ghana. In regards to the high interest rates, and this time again, I'm juxtaposing it to other countries here and there. Why should the mortgage system in Ghana be taken seriously by any investor?
Okay, so the mortgage system is it's one way or the other a very
is it a web sophisticated?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the right word for it. It's a death trap, actually. It's a death trap, especially for Ghanaians.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so primarily mortgages are in the USD denomination, okay? Anybody who is going for a mortgage in Ghana is going to pay its USD equivalent, and its interest is also quoted in USD. And we know that the depreciation of the CD also affects the dollar when it comes to how much you are going to pay. In fact, I have some clients who have regretted ever going into taking mortgage, okay? Mortgage. Because at the end of it all, they will be paying as much as 300% to 400% by the time that they have finished paying the mortgage, which in itself is not feasible, especially if you are not earning in United States dollars. And in Ghana, why it is not feasible is that hardly do even banks give individual estate developers finance to develop their infrastructure so that they be able to leverage on it and cut down prices. Most of the construction projects that are in Ghana are self-financed by an individual or a company. So at the end of the day, they will not be able to leverage on any finance, supporting finance to cut down prices. So I am of the opinion that instead of companies and banks going into mortgages where they are giving loans so someone will ask, what is mortgage? Mortgage is primarily a loan that is intended to buy a house. It's used to buy a house. So you go to a bank and tell them, I am a worker in XYZ place. This is my income, and I cannot afford to buy a house outright. So instead of not being able to afford a house outright, give me loan for me to go and buy a house so that I'll be paying it in bits and pieces until I have finished paying. Even in Europe, a lot of people, in fact, statistics has said that more than 47% of people who go for mortgage end up getting foreclosed. Foreclosed means that it gets to a time where they are not able to pay for their mortgage, so the banks come back and take their property.
Okay.
And then they lose. So which means that, especially in Ghana, it doesn't even make sense at all for you to even consider, especially, number one, if you are not earning in a foreign denominated currency. Because you'll be affected by inflation and depreciation of your CD equivalent. Imagine that if you had bought a house through mortgage as of 5 years ago, you would have been paying about 7 Ghana cedis equivalent to $1. But today you are going to pay 16 Ghana cedis equivalent to $1, which is what percentage increase? So that is why it doesn't make financial sense, okay? It doesn't make financial sense to go into a mortgage facility here in Ghana.
Okay, thank you so much. If you were to advise any investor going into real estate, we've seen quite some rise in hotel apartments and studio apartments all over town, especially in Accra. And it looks like a lot of people have done their feasibility studies and probably have seen that there's quite some market for such high-rise buildings here and there. But generally, if you wanted to advise any real estate investors coming into the country, well, it's looking like you wouldn't ask that they go into the mortgage system, right? But which other areas do you advise that they look at?
So it's actually a good business for the people who are actually doing the financing, the banks. It's good business for them. I am talking about the ordinary person who is actually going into
the client going to purchase
the clients. Because after all, for the companies or the banks, it is good business for them. You get what I mean? Because if you give me, you are going to pay me 300% within the next 1 year, or 2 years or 3 years, then it's good business for me. And no other business might be able to bring them that much returns on investment. But I am talking to the ordinary African, okay, or the ordinary American, or instead of going into a mortgage system where you are indebted to a bank and you pay over a period of time, it makes sense rather, instead of going into a mortgage system, to rent, okay, until you are ready to actually build a house. Now, what I tell people who are investors who want to come into Africa to start any business in respect to real estate is only two, okay, only two.
Okay.
The first one is what I call land banking, okay, land banking. What is land banking? Land banking basically means that you buy land in a remote location or a developing location and keep for stipulated times. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It doesn't matter. Just buy it as a store of value and keep it for that long a period. And after the time is due, where you see that the development has come close to the project, then you start either redeveloping it for sale or making it a serviced land by creating infrastructures in there and sell it out as premium prices.
Wow.
So that's number one. That's the best investment. In fact, I've had investors from all over the world come in and I've been able to lead them to start investment in such portfolios, okay? And it is low risk because at the end of the day, it won't require you to do any extra thing or so for long-term investors, people who want to invest in real estate long-term, okay, maybe 5 to 10 years. This is the best. Don't worry yourself. All you need to do is that you do your documentation for the stipulated lands, and then you do a protective wall or something to protect the land and get a security there who occasionally would go there to make sure that there's no encroachment or encumbrance on the stipulated land. Okay, so this is some of the things that you do in respect to getting what land. And I tell people, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a lot of money. In fact, are you aware that in Ghana right now, for as low as 5,000 Ghana cedis, you can own a land in Ghana.
I was going to
even
ask
as low
about
as
that.
2,000 Ghana cedis. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't require you to have a lot of money to start your real estate investments project.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
It doesn't require you much. When we were talking, a lot of people were assuming that, hey, then the person must have a lot of money. No. With as low as 5,000 Ghana cedis, 2,000 Ghana cedis, you can get a land somewhere in Ghana. Maybe the place is not ready today. Maybe the place is further away from the city. It doesn't matter. Buy and put down, because real estate land is the only asset that keeps on appreciating. In fact, if you have a residential property, it will not appreciate as much as landlord in terms of value. So it is very important for you to reinvest in what? Land banking. So take note of that. All you need to do is to get a real estate company that understands the purchasing of properties in that nature. Do your due diligence and acquire some for yourself. Keep for the next 5-20 years, and then when it gets to time when it is ripe, and then you develop it or resell it as much as you can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doc. I think that makes things a bit more simple and brings it down to the average Ghanaian who may not have their $1 million to invest in hotel apartments. So we don't have a lot of time, but I would wish that there's this debate that I think we can get into a bit just for a few minutes, but just, more conclusively when it comes to the mortgage system in UK, in America, and things like that. Others feel that, it is worth investing in the mortgage system in the Western world, looking at what they can leverage on and what opportunities are there in that environment, in juxtaposed to Ghana and Africa in perspective. Or you think that the global trend is getting tougher and tougher for such related investments?
So in respect to the real estate investment strategy, another strategy, as you said, is the mortgage system, okay? But the mortgage system is well done by banking institutions. So I do not envisage an individual going into mortgage systems where they are offering loans to prospective home buyers as a mortgage system. It is not feasible to do it on their own, because have to leverage on...
What about where I get into mortgage, but then I rent my home?
Exactly. Leverage on other products in order to finance the mortgage system. Okay. So because it's a long-term loan facility that is not paid within a year or 2 years or 3 years. Some pay as much as 30 to 50, 35 years. Yeah. Some mortgage can go as much as 40 years, 50 years to pay back that amount of money. So it is something that an individual cannot do. It is only banks that have the financial wherewithal to be able to do that. So if we are talking and targeting about small and medium investors, people who have between, let's say, $1,000 to about 500,000 United States dollars and wants to start an investment project, in Africa or in Ghana specifically, because Africa is ripe for all investment, especially in respect to real estate. When you look at the figures, Africa is the most highly sought after in terms of getting your returns on investment, in respect to any investment, because we have a younger population, the housing demand is very, very high, and people are very motivated to get their own places because of our cultural connotations, Culturally, in Africa, the reason why everybody wants to get their own house is because culturally, you are assumed to be irresponsible and someone who hasn't matched up to anything if you don't have a house of your own. But in Europe and other places, it doesn't really matter because it's not a cultural thing. So that is how come in Africa, almost every young person wants to get a place of their own. So it makes it a very viable place for you to go into real estate, especially in Africa. You get what I mean? So it is very important for you going into real estate to consider that in real estate, look at three things. Number one, you are looking at land banking. Number two, you are looking at developing already existing buildings and renovating them, remodeling them, and reselling them. That's another very good business that we normally underestimate that has the good potential. Maybe there's an uncompleted house in your locality, uncompleted building or stores in a market. You go in there, you buy off the person at a very discounted price, and then you redevelop it and sell it out. Don't rent it out, because it doesn't make financial sense to even rent some of these things out. Rather, once you redevelop it, you sell it, you go to the next project, and you move it from one project to the other until you are able to do almost 3 or 4 concurrently. The same with real estate. Never ever buy a house or build a house for rent, especially in Africa. I'm repeating myself. It doesn't make financial sense based on the data, okay, to rent a house, to buy a house to rent out, because or to build a house and rent out. Because when you look at the figures, it will take you about 45 years to get your returns on investment, which doesn't make sense.
Because it doesn't matter the location.
It doesn't matter the location. No matter where the location is. Okay. Because note that even depending on the location, example, if you are buying a house in Airport Hills, okay, you are paying premium. So it doesn't make, if I need about $450,000, okay, to buy a property at Airport Hills. But I'll need about $150,000 to buy the same property at Lakeside Estate. Okay. So it doesn't really make any difference, because I'm still going to pay premium for the location. And then if I have to rent them out, even if I'm renting the one at Airport Hills for $1,500 and the one at Lakeside Estate for $300, it's still the same thing we are talking about. I don't know if you're a math person, you'd understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, especially looking at the percentage. Yeah,
exactly. So it boils down to the same thing at the end of the day. Yeah. So that is why, if instead of buying to rent, okay, or building an apartment for rent, rather build it and sell it out. But the advantage of doing the apartment is that then you can leverage on what the facilities management fee as your interest, because that one, it will never go away. You get what I mean? So you have sold the apartments. So that's what a lot of businesses are doing right now. A lot of developers, they build the high-rise, sell it out, and then they'll ask you to pay maybe $50 to $100 every month for service charge. And it's a means of also generating income for them. Okay. So it is not Doctor, I renting the property.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm getting the trajectory of what you're talking about and all that, but people still need rentals, especially for those who don't have what it takes to buy it. How do we manage the system so that we still have landlords willing to rent, so that those who don't have what it takes to buy it will still rent anyway?
Yeah. So in every situation, there will always be the scapegoats. Yeah, it's as simple as that. If you understand, you understand. There will always be the scapegoats who will not look at the numbers, who will not look at the figures, who will not look at the indicators. You get what I mean? And still go ahead and develop it. And later they'll come back and say, had I known? Because Enoch, you know me very well. You know I have a lot of apartments that I built myself. Yes. Yeah. I have almost 6 different apartments scattered around the country. Yes. And my finance people came and gave me the figures, and I looked at the figures, and it didn't make sense. Okay, so I am saying it not based on whimsical ideologies. I'm saying it based on what statistics and figures. I'm not a figures guy. So I look at the figures and compare. If it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So there will always be the scapegoats. Yes,
Yes.
they will always give you the scapegoat who will still not take it as it is and still go into rental operating. Secondly, also, if only you are doing it for the generations after you, okay, as a heirloom or an inheritance, that one is fine. Nobody will say don't do it. You get what I mean?
Yes.
So I've now considered that the ones that I have already, I am leaving it for my children, not because it is going to be a returns on investment, because we are talking here about returns on investment.
Okay.
Not something I'm doing for my children and my children's children. These are the lines we have to draw.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity, because we can look at other factors why rentals may still go on for a particular individual or investor, but we don't have all the time for that. But I think you've made some points in that regard as well to separate it from, the hardcore business return on investment kind of posture for investors. So thank you for that clarity. Because we don't have a lot of time, what would be your advice for the government? What do you think they can improve on when it comes to the real estate system in Ghana in order to make it more business friendly for investors?
So primarily what governments can do is more of the infrastructure, okay? When we say infrastructure, developing the infrastructure in respect to good roads, which is their mandate, good water, sewer systems, and electricity generation in all the places these are things that government is government's mandate to do and deliver to the people. In fact, it is only in Africa where it is a privilege to have water. It is a privilege to have electricity. It's a privilege. I sometimes I don't understand. You call these service providers on government's front lines, and it's as if they are doing you a favor. And it's only in Africa that all these things happen. So if we can get to a point where we understand that it is government's responsibility to provide us good roads, it is government's responsibility to provide us electricity, because it is not as if they are going to dash it to us. We are going to pay for it. Meanwhile, the infrastructures are not there. The roads that are being built are very deplorable, are very bad standard, because they give it to family and friends who do not have a whimsical idea about how to do a proper road. So all these things are some of the bureaucracies that has to be desegregated and taken out of our corrupt system, especially in the governance of our infrastructures, so that it will leverage on that for other people who have the wherewithal to also go into real estate and also pay their taxes in return and pay their utility in return, for government to be able to raise a lot of money to do its projects.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think that we've exhausted quite some salient points here, and it's all too soon. It is time for us to draw the curtains on this particular episode. But I hope, viewers, that you've enjoyed it. It's been Vocal Brown and it's been Solution Ghana. This is your Solution Resource Center, and you're going nowhere. So until the next episode, see you very soon. Bye-bye.